This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with a concerning incident at a St. Vital elementary school this week. A registered sex offender was able to get inside the building, hide in a washroom, and grab a student. While the student was not harmed physically, police are calling the incident disturbing and say it's left people shocked and shaken. CBC's Gavin Axelrod has more.
Police say a student at Darwin School was grabbed by a stranger in the bathroom Thursday afternoon. They believe a man hid in a stall, and when a student left another stall, he grabbed them. The student managed to break free and ran to tell a teacher. The man was later arrested at a nearby mall.
Nothing happened to this child physically in terms of harm, thank God. And what a brave student.
28-year-old Scott William George faces a number of charges related to the incident.
Assault, forcible confinement, and failed to comply with prohibition order regarding children ×2. He's been detained in custody.
This isn't the first time George has been accused of targeting children or intruding in a school. Court records show he's a registered sex offender. George was convicted of groping a minor at a movie theater in 2022. He was sentenced to 2 years after pleading guilty to sexual interference. In March of this year, he breached a court order by being found in the hallways of Dakota Collegiate. Kristen Michalik is superintendent of Louis Riel School Division.
The experience is deeply distressing. It's shaken all of us.
He says the school locks its doors and has security cameras.
Obviously, this person slipped in despite all our efforts to be vigilant about avoiding this ever happening.
A review of the incident will be done. Supports have also been made available for those impacted.
We are actively going to put into place measures to ensure a greater vigilance going forward at Darwin School, of course, but we're thinking of all 41 schools.
Police and the school division didn't share any more information about the student Friday. Police are asking anyone with information to get in touch with their child abuse unit or submit an anonymous tip through Crime Stoppers as their investigation continues. Gavin Axelrod, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Winnipeg outreach team is seeing an influx of homeless people showing up on their doorstep looking for help. Encampment restrictions have been in place for nearly 2 weeks now, but the city admits finding people housing is a struggle. And St. Boniface StreetLink says since the city started clearing out those encampments, people have been coming to them needing a place to stay. CBC's Cameron McLean reports.
These bulldozers showed up Thursday at an encampment in Moston Park near the Granite Curling Club. City workers put up camping prohibited signs after new restrictions went into effect on November 17th. The city says it's working on finding housing for 15 people living in the camp. But finding the available units has been a challenge. Officials with St. Boniface StreetLink say people from encampments are coming to them for help, despite it not receiving city funding for outreach.
So what's happening is police are bringing them to us, and people are coming on their own to us. And so it is St. Boniface StreetLinks that is largely intervening here to link people to income supports and housing.
In the last week, Marion Willis says StreetLinks housed 11 people from encampments, including Moston Park, as well as camps near the Louise Bridge and along Mayfair Avenue. Last week, the city announced it housed about 4 people from 2 encampments along Pacific Avenue and Empress Street. Since then, the city has not said how many camps have been cleared or how many people it has housed. Mayor Scott Gillingham says city crews have put up no camping signs at 12 sites.
I know that the individuals so far in the encampments we've cleared, I spoke to our CAO this morning, have been either successfully housed or on their own volition have chosen to move locations. I don't know how many, I don't know the numbers on that.
A city spokesperson told CBC News crews went to the Moston Park encampment to clean up after a fire, not to clear people out. As for the Mayfair and Louise sites, no work has been done to try to clear those sites either. A police spokesperson told CBC News officers responded to individual requests for help, not as part of the city's encampment protocol. They reached out to StreetLinks and provided camp residents a ride. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A search of a Winnipeg landfill for the remains of a First Nations woman is set to get underway next week. CBC News has learned that on Monday, searchers will begin scouring Brady Road landfill for the remains of Ashley Shingoose. Shingoose was one of 4 women killed by a convicted serial killer. Remains of 2 of the other women were found in a different landfill earlier this year. A test phase was done in August with excavation and ground-penetrating radar to narrow down the search location. Searchers will also be looking for the body of Tanya Nepanak. Nepanak went missing more than a decade ago. This is the second time they will be searching this same landfill for her remains. Charges were stayed against the man accused of her killing. If you're traveling this holiday season, getting through airport security may be a little bit faster. A new piece of 3D X-ray technology has been installed at security at Winnipeg's airport. It allows liquids, aerosols, and gels to stay packed away as long as they don't exceed that 100 milliliter limit. The new technology allows security officers to better detect explosives and other threatening items.
A lot less room for passenger error as well, so you're not going to have to deal with, oh shoot, I forgot to, put my liquids and aerosols in a plastic bag. They're in there, you don't have to panic. It's going to just go through the scanner and everything will be much easier and quicker.
So far, the CT machines have been installed at 8 airports in Canada, including Vancouver, Calgary, and Toronto. Winnipeg is set to get 3 more early next year. Close to 12,000 travelers pass through the Winnipeg airport every day. Some Winnipeg lawyers have a warning for people traveling into the U.S. It comes after Manitobans with criminal charges dismissed in Canadian courts were denied entry. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, travelers who've had brushes with the law should be prepared to prove they have no past convictions.
This past summer, a Manitoban traveling to the United States was denied entry at the Pembina, North Dakota crossing. He was told by border officers he didn't have the proper documentation. This after being held for 4 hours and questioned about Canadian criminal charges that were stayed 6 years ago. His lawyer, Michael Dick, thought it was unusual the U.S. didn't let his client in.
In my experience, that's not something that I've ever come across before.
And then something similar just happened to another one of Dick's clients who had a conditional discharge for a breach of probation. The person was prevented from flying to the U.S. through Toronto.
Essentially, his trip was ruined. He wasn't able to get through, and that was the end of that.
Global Affairs Canada cautions every country or territory decides who can enter and leave its borders. In the case of the U.S., Global Affairs says ports of entry are computerized and connected to a centralized database that show criminal convictions in both countries. While a conviction may mean you can't cross, the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association of Manitoba says denying entry to people who've been charged but not convicted seems to be a shift.
It seems now, based on this story, that maybe the ambit of what it is they're concerned with is expanded somewhat.
CBC was told there has been no change in policy. U.S. Customs and Border Protection says applicants for admission bear the burden of proof to establish they are clearly eligible to enter the United States. We're not naming the man who had his theft charges stayed because he has concerns about fear of reprisal when trying to travel to the U.S. He tells us they were related to a dispute with a previous employer. He got documentation from court to prove the matter was dealt with, and there was no conviction.
He was able to get the paperwork and then go back, and it seemed like an unnecessary hassle for a person who doesn't have a criminal conviction or doesn't have a criminal record.
He's now been allowed into the U.S. twice, but his story highlights how travelers should be prepared to prove their criminal charges have been disposed of before trying to go south. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Riley's in now, and Riley, I know people in the newsroom at least talking about bringing out their bigger jackets and finding toques, mitts, everything, because boy, oh boy, it's going to start to get cold soon.
Great weekend to do that, Brittany. Just pull everything out of storage for the winter months because, yes, we are on the cusp of some colder air here. We've tried really hard to get some clearing across southern Manitoba today. I was hopeful, and we did get a couple of peaks of the sun earlier in the day today, but the cloud has won out again. This because of another system that's pushed south of the border here. This one likely to bring up to 15 centimeters once again to parts of the Dakotas, which, if you remember earlier in the week, got hit with another snowstorm. So certainly a lot of moisture coming south of the border. all that missing us for the most part here in Manitoba. Temperatures this afternoon, yes, actually for the first time in a while, I can say actually below seasonal for this time of the year. -7 in Winnipeg. Our normal high -6 for this time of the year. -8 in Brandon. Minus double digits into parts of northern Manitoba. I am looking at us sinking to about -11 overnight tonight in Winnipeg. It'll depend on that level of cloud cover that we have through the overnight hours, because that does act as a bit of a blanket. So whether or not we actually get to -11 remains to be seen right now. I do think that we get into a bit of clearing, so mainly cloudy in the morning, then some sunshine into the afternoon. Brittany, looking at a slim chance we could see some flurries again through the day tomorrow with a pickup in winds out of the northwest. I'll go into details on that when I come back.
All right, thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
It's being pulled from liquor store shelves, but could U.S. booze soon be back at a discount? What one province is doing and whether Manitoba could follow suit. The province is sticking to its ban on importing and selling U.S. alcohol. Premier Wab Kinew was asked if Manitoba would follow Nova Scotia's lead and sell off its remaining inventory of U.S. booze and donate the net profits to food banks. Well, Kinew says considering that idea makes sense, he praised what the Canadian ban on U.S. alcohol has accomplished.
The tool that we've used here to pull the American booze off the shelves is send a message to Donald Trump's administration. You've heard them talk about this. This is a pain point for them.
The ban was put in place in February after the U.S. imposed a 25% tariffs on some Canadian goods. Kinew said Manitoba's economy has weathered those tariffs fairly well, but he says the economy is now starting to feel the impacts. Meantime, Manitoba is joining an aspirational proposal to build a nationwide hydro grid that's very early in the planning stages. Kinew says the province has signed a partnership agreement led by Ontario to build one. He's calling on all other provinces and territories to join in. The Premier says Manitoba can help its neighbours and it would benefit this province too.
We can help Saskatchewan, we can help Alberta decarbonize, we can help Ontario with their cost of living. We've got a good cost of living here in Manitoba. We want to keep it that way, and helping to sell more power, create more jobs here in Manitoba, it's one of the best ways that we can do that.
But Manitoba isn't in the position to sell much electricity. It's planning to build more electrical capacity because we're running out. And nobody has put forward any money or promises to build a cross-country energy grid. An almost century-old organization working with families and youth in crisis is handing over leadership to a First Nation, something it's calling Reconciliation in Action. CBC's Felicia Adam was there for the historic transition.
It's a first in Manitoba, making sure young people and families receive care rooted in First Nations culture, values, and tradition.
Today, Broken Head Ojibwe Nation leads the link.
The historic move would mean structural changes to the almost century-old organization,
so that we can cut off the impacts of colonization and, again, restore self-governance and sovereignty of Indigenous families to Indigenous communities.
The Link runs programs for those in crisis, one of the largest in the province, helping thousands every year. Chief Gordon Bluesky says they can now be part of the solution.
I look forward to seeing how we can use these services because at the end of the day, we have so many problems. So many issues. I'm not talking about just First Nation, I'm talking across the board.
70% of people accessing the organization's services are First Nations. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says the transition is essential to return youth and family care to First Nations.
The path to decolonizing child welfare in its totality is a brave path. It's a hard path. It's a courageous path. But it's also a necessary path.
Bluesky says close to 1,600 people from Broken Head live in Winnipeg, and oftentimes they don't know where to find resources.
But now we have a facility here that we can direct members to and say you need help with social, you need help with medical, you need help with all the services that's provided within here.
Part of the structural change means new board members from Broken Head Ojibwe Nation. Erica Straightbear says she'll be making decisions on how the Link will offer services for young people.
You know, expecting good things, that they could feel comfortable, that we're not in this colonial mindset anymore, that big things are happening.
Creating a safe and welcoming place for everyone in the province. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A popular East Kildonan arena has been abruptly closed because of structural issues. People who use the Terry Sawchuk Arena are now being forced to find ice time elsewhere. The city says staff found unexpected and significant structural issues while working on a restoration project. The undisclosed issue was a big enough concern the arena was immediately closed. The city did not have an immediate timeline for when work would be finished, but say it's in the process of contacting all rental groups to help them relocate ice time. Manitoba Hydro is getting ready to remove more than 260 trees from a 1 kilometre stretch of roadway to prevent power outages. Hydro says it needs to cut the trees down along Selkirk Avenue between Keewatin and Railway Streets. The company says tree contact has already caused power outages and increased risk to workers who repair those lines. They can also start fires. Hydro says trimming them is not an option because the Siberian elms are too fast growing and not compatible with overhead lines. The work on that will all start next week. A vacant house went up in flames last night in the Centennial neighborhood. An off-duty fire crew were in the area around 8 when they spotted smoke and flames coming from a vacant home in the 400 block of Bannatyne. It was too dangerous for the team to go inside, so the fire was fought from the street. Aerial trucks were also called in. It took hours to get the fire under control, and this same house burned in July. It's a total loss. That time of year also that after those fires, we start to see really slick roadways around there. So a good reminder for lots of areas around that fire.
Yeah, for sure.
Going to be nice and slick.
Yeah, we're on tap for a chilly weekend, below seasonal for really all of the province, Brittany, as we get through the next couple of days and really the stretch that will last here. I'm going to start with the Santa Claus Parade forecast because we have a few of those happening this weekend and throughout the month into early December. So we'll take a look at those as they come. But here's some of the options for the weekend. There's one happening in Verdun Saturday evening, Dauphin also happening Saturday evening. Temperatures around -12, -13 degrees as those are getting underway. So if you're taking the kids out, bundle them up extra tight because standing out and watching a parade for a little while will kind of put that chill through you, right? Sunday in Gillam at 3:30 in the afternoon, looking at a temperature around -18, a bit brighter as we get into the day on Sunday, as we start to get high pressure nudging its way into the province here. So you can see this low that's developed south of the border. This is what's bringing some of that snow to the Dakotas, parts of Minnesota as we head into the weekend here in Manitoba, at least. On the northern edges of this cloud cover that's been kicked up from south of the border, this is a chance of flurries. Slim chance of flurries as we get through the overnight hours, maybe a couple of odd stray flurries into the morning hours. And then we get that high pressure setting in. And this time it should clear us out as we get late Saturday into the day on Sunday, and I think this will make things a lot brighter as we get toward especially the later half of the weekend, but the trade-off being a cool down in temperatures as we head into next week as well. So you can see how defined this trough in the jet stream has become. Virtually all of the U.S. Midwest, all of Eastern Canada, the prairies, into parts of BC plunged into temperatures that are below seasonal here as we head into the next week even. I'm not looking at this lifting until we get to around the 8th or the 9th of December, and you can just see how this pool of cool air just sits across the southern prairies and the Dakotas as well. And this is going to bring us into temperatures that are close to 5 degrees below seasonal in some cases as we get into the next week or so here. Temperatures first thing in the morning looking at around -9 in Winnipeg, -10s into the west, and you can start to see where we have temperatures approaching -20 for far northern parts of the province. It's air like that will start to sink south, which you'll see in the long range forecast here. So looking at -7 tomorrow afternoon in Winnipeg, -11 for Sunday, temperatures hanging around -10 to start next week, Brittany, and you can see the overnight temperatures here close to or at -20 by the time we get to the middle of next week.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
More to come after the break. Stay with us. Fallout from the Ottawa-Alberta pipeline agreement continues. The Liberal cabinet has already lost longtime Minister Stephen Guilbeault, though he remains a government MP, and questions are swirling on whether other Liberals are opposed and what happens next with the pipeline proposal itself. Olivia Stefanovic reports.
What do you think of Liberal unity right now? When asked about internal divisions over Ottawa's energy agreement with Alberta, Liberal MPs insist they're all on the same page.
Quite unified. There's always discussions. We're standing united. We're absolutely unified. There's all kinds of room for different opinions in our caucus.
But the opposition is seizing on longtime environmentalist Stephen Guilbeault's resignation from cabinet over Ottawa's Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta, prioritizing a pipeline.
I mean, clearly, what the Liberal government's doing doesn't line up with his values. So, I think, good on him for standing up for his values.
So the Liberal MPs who are watching this unfold, they must be asking themselves, how could this be the path for the future?
While Guilbeault is no longer a minister, he remains a Liberal MP. So far, there haven't been any other departures.
What do you think Guilbeault resigning means for Liberal support in Quebec?
I don't think it means anything. I think that yesterday's announcement was a good news story for Canada.
Grow the economy. And Guilbeault's Quebec colleagues are defending the government's MOU.
You have a number of conditions to make sure that Canada can be a responsible and sustainable energy producer.
But Vancouver area MP Wade Grant released a statement telling British Columbians he hears their concerns about the MOU clearly, adding he will keep pressing for transparency, consultation, and robust environmental safeguards.
It has already become, and I'm worried that it will continue to be, an energy vampire that sucks federal time and money.
British Columbia's premier is warning First Nations in his province could pull support for other major projects, including a new liquefied natural gas facility.
The federal government needs to be extremely careful to make sure that their efforts with Alberta don't put those projects at significant risk.
That leaves the Prime Minister in a challenging balancing act, one where he may have to make difficult choices, sacrificing support for one project in favor of another. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
U.S. President Donald Trump is vowing, in his words, to permanently pause migration from what he calls third world nations. It follows the death of one of two National Guard members shot earlier this week in Washington. Chris Reyes has the latest from New York.
She was super kind-hearted, super sweet.
The former boyfriend of Sarah Beckstrom is speaking out after the National Guard service member died of her injuries Thursday night. Beckstrom and another serviceman, Andrew Wolf, were shot in Washington, D.C. earlier this week while on duty. Wolf is in critical condition.
I don't know if it's really hit me the hardest yet. Kind of in shock.
U.S. officials said the charges against the suspect in that brazen shooting will be upgraded to first-degree murder. According to investigators, the shooting suspect, Ramanullah Lakanwal, is an Afghan national who worked for the CIA during the war in Afghanistan. He was brought to the U.S. under a program for those who assisted American troops. President Trump is now signaling even stricter immigration policies as a response to the deadly shooting. Last night, Trump wrote on Truth Social that he's permanently pausing immigration from what he called third world countries without listing the countries affected. He also accused President Biden of carelessly bringing in Afghan nationals into the U.S. after Americans pulled out of the country in 2021.
Look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other, and that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out.
Earlier this year, Trump already signed an executive order limiting or restricting U.S. entry for nationals of almost 20 countries, mostly in the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
The United Nations is condemning the killings of two Palestinian men by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank. It's also calling for an independent investigation into what happened. Tom Perry has the details from Jerusalem and a warning that some of the details in this story are graphic and may be disturbing to some viewers.
A deadly shooting caught on video during a raid in the occupied West Bank. 2 Palestinian men emerging with arms raised in surrender after a standoff with Israeli soldiers and police. The men raised their shirts, showing they're unarmed. Troops move in, delivering kicks to the men, then gunfire. Both men are shot dead. Police and the military say they were wanted terrorists who had hurled explosives and fired at security forces. Islamic Jihad has reportedly said both men were members of its military wing, but in Jenin, families say the men didn't have to die. It's a brutal and hideous incident, says Mahmoud Assasa, brother of Youssef Assasa, one of the dead men. It's a crime because he surrendered. Why did they kill him? Asks Rula Abdallah, wife of Mustafa Abdallah, the other man who was shot. The United Nations has condemned the killings.
We're appalled by the brazen killing by Israeli border police yesterday of 2 Palestinian men in Jenin in the occupied West Bank in yet another apparent summary execution.
Palestinians in the West Bank have been living under tightened Israeli security and escalating attacks by Israeli settlers. The UN says more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed in the area since the October 7th attacks. More than 40 Israeli soldiers and civilians have been killed in that same period. The Israeli military and police say they're investigating the shooting in Jenin, though human rights groups put little faith in that process.
It's absolutely clear that the Israeli investigative mechanism is unwilling and unable to hold Israeli forces accountable for these types of crimes.
Israel's far-right national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, went on social media to offer his full support to the soldiers and police who fired on the 2 Palestinian men, writing that terrorists must die. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Syria says an Israeli raid into its territory has left 13 people dead and dozens wounded. Israel says the mission was to detain militants planning cross-border attacks, and that its soldiers were fired on first. It happened in a border village. Israel's military reports several of its soldiers were wounded. It says what it calls terrorists will not entrench themselves at the border. Both the UN and Syria are denouncing the raid. Syria says 10 of those killed were civilians. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff has resigned hours after anti-corruption agents searched his home. Andrei Yermak has been Ukraine's key negotiator since the Russian invasion nearly 4 years ago. The search comes as Kyiv faces U.S. pressure to make big concessions to Moscow to end the war. Officials in Ukraine unveiled a sweeping investigation earlier this month into an alleged multi-million-dollar kickback scheme at the state atomic energy company. Yermak was not named as a suspect, but calls were growing for his dismissal by those who felt his presence compromised Ukraine's bargaining power. Yermak has been a close friend of Zelensky for years and instrumental in guiding his campaign for election in 2019. Zelensky says he'll consider a replacement Saturday. Authorities in Hong Kong say number of people killed after Wednesday's massive fire in an apartment complex has risen to 128. More than 200 others are still missing. This comes as police say they've made 8 more arrests in connection with the fire. Laura Westbrook has those details.
With this fire finally being put out, authorities are continuing their investigations, with police entering into the building to collect evidence. Officials say they can't rule out the possibility of finding more bodies as they continue to conduct their investigations. More arrests have also been made of people linked to the estate's renovations. The estate had been undergoing renovation at the time of the fire, and scrutiny has been turning to the materials was used for those renovations, particularly the styrofoam which was used on the outside of the windows, the styrofoam being highly flammable, and authorities saying could be one of the reasons why this fire spread so quickly and so intensely. Authorities also said that the fire alarms weren't working effectively enough, and one resident I spoke to who was inside the building at the time of the fire told me that he didn't hear an alarm, and instead someone called him telling him to leave, and he was able to get out. Now, people have been gathering behind me to donate clothes and shoes, nappies, even power banks to those victims of this tragedy. Not far from where I am as well, there is a community centre where there are photo albums of some of the victims to help relatives who may be looking for information about their missing loved ones. Authorities saying they haven't been able to identify some of the deceased yet. There is a lot of grief, but there is also anger here, with questions being asked about what went wrong and who should be held accountable. Laura Westbrook, CBC News, Hong Kong.
Peace and unity were the main themes in Turkey today, where Pope Leo is continuing his first trip abroad. The Pope received a big welcome as he arrived at the Holy Spirit Cathedral in Istanbul. He had a landmark meeting with Christian leaders from across the Middle East, where he condemned violence in the name of religion and urged an end to world conflicts. The push underway to ban all sports gambling ads in Canada, and what young Manitobans have to say about their habits. That's next. Well, as you start to pull out all your winter gear,
Yes.
hopefully you're starting to pull out all your winter gear for your pets as
Yeah.
well. Riley, you've shown a wide range of animals this week. We've had horses, we've had bunnies. The dog walking forecast has been anything but.
Yeah, everybody loves a good animal picture, me included.
Yes.
And everybody needs to be ready for winter.
It's true.
So
It's
that
true.
includes the feline friends, although I think they're probably a little bit less inclined than the pups are to wear the winter gear. But here we go. Nonetheless, Luna looks like she just loves to just relax and sleep inside, would rather be anywhere but outside in the cold. And I get that. Thank you, Anita, for sending this very cute picture. And you can send yours, as always. I'll need some dogs for the coming weeks, or any of your pets as well, to talk back at cbc.ca. So as we get into the day tomorrow, a bit cloudier to start. Once we get later into the day, that's when I think we do get a better chance of some clearing as we get high pressure pushing in behind this system south of the border, which I'll show you in just a moment here. Looking at temperatures hovering around -7 again tomorrow afternoon, which is now below seasonal for this time of the year. The first time in a while that I've said that our daytime highs are sitting below the seasonal normal. Okay, I wanted to show you this system south of the border. This again picked up steam further west toward the Rockies and has been pushing across the U.S. Midwest. This again will have another impact into parts of southern Ontario, which is looking at some snow from this system. Maybe not to the tune of 10 to 15 centimeters like the Dakotas are expecting, but certainly looking at some snow east of us as we get into next week. You can see how expansive the winter weather warnings and advisories are south of the border, right through into parts of Detroit, into Minnesota, and back into the Dakotas because of this system and the impact that it will have with winter travel and what's already been a crazy week travel-wise south of the border because of that first system that pushed through the Midwest earlier in the week as well. So just one on top of another here. Overnight temperatures tonight looking at -11s to -13s in the west. Into northwestern Ontario, much the same, -12 to -14 overnight. Places like Melita, Boissevain could pick up the odd stray flurry through the evening into the night tonight. And temperatures hovering in the far north, close to -20 tonight, -18 into Dooley Lake, Gillam, Shamattawa, both at -16. Temperatures in the northeast, really not going all that far tomorrow. -13s through Gillam and Shamattawa, closer to -10 through the Pas, OCN, Grand Rapids, into Norway House. Mostly cloudy skies. We'll start to get a bit of this clearing happening as we get into Sunday, but you'll see as we advance through Saturday in the south, how that high pressure really starts to push out some of this cloud cover as we get through the afternoon. So by the afternoon, looking at mainly sunny skies even through Roblin, Swan River, Dauphin. It'll take a while for that to get to us here in the Red River Valley. And Sunday, Brittany, looking a lot brighter. Temperatures in the south, though, hovering around -10 degrees.
All right, thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Doctors and senators in Canada want to restrict sports betting ads because they're worried young people are being set up for a future of problem gambling. We asked Manitobans how they feel about the ads and how much they're spending.
Do you bet on sports?
I have in the past, yes.
Okay, how much were you spending when you did?
I did around 300, 400.
Like a month or a year?
I'd say around a month, yeah. I realized I was losing a lot more money than I was making, and I didn't really know what I was doing, so I went to other forms of gambling.
I do not, but I do know people that bet on sports, yeah.
And how much do you think they've spent?
Oh, thousands.
I consider myself smarter with it. I set the limit to my deposit limit is $10.
I'm curious, do you think sports betting in Canada is a problem?
Oh, it definitely is. The prediction market as a whole is a very big problem, as it is it shows to be a way to make money. However, you could easily lose much more than you earn.
With how much is advertised in sports nowadays and how much money people are putting into it, especially students, it's a bit too much, I think.
There's a desperation for making ends meet. You know, it's difficult, and so gambling is high risk, high reward. Some people are willing to take that risk.
I mean, if you do it properly and you within your financial limits, for sure, it's not bad.
I've seen horror stories where people have lost their life savings, lots of money, just gambling away, right?
So how do you feel about ads during sporting events?
The incentive to get gambling in the mainstream has become way too much, where it's just harming society in general and sports fans. So it's not a good thing at all.
They're quite in your face, everywhere.
Oh, it's somewhat manipulative, right? You are using this event and showing it this way to earn a lot of money. However, it doesn't show any of the downsides, anything of the sort.
That downside, the risk of addiction, mental health concerns, relationship problems, not to mention, as you heard, the money and the financial problems it can bring. Information Radio's Corey Funk spoke with Joshua Harris, a licensed insolvency trustee. He says the number of people coming to him with gambling debt is not only growing, but he says his clients are getting younger.
In the past, gambling was directly related to casinos, and it was a very obvious thing. I think what we're seeing now is a lot less people recognizing addiction and issues with gambling. It's just an app on your phone or on your computer, and it's targeting young men, like they said. And sports. It looks fun. I don't remember growing up seeing casino ads everywhere, but you can't get away from these online gambling ads.
So what about sports gambling in particular? Like you said, your clients you notice are getting younger. How much can you attribute that to sports betting in particular?
I would say it's entirely attributed to the sports betting. And one of the main things with it is the recognition of the issue itself. It's so much easier to recognize you have a problem when you're actually holding chips in your hand at a casino, like I mentioned. But when it's just related to an app, what we're seeing is people aren't even recognizing that that's the cause of their debt issues or their insolvency.
And you said, as we mentioned earlier, that many of them are getting younger. Why do you think they are getting younger? Is it just because of just the ads, or what do you think it is?
I think it's the ads that are really targeting younger people. They're in when you're watching the sports games, it's every commercial break you're seeing multiple gambling ads. And older folks are just more comfortable going to an actual casino or playing a slot machine or something like that. While as younger people, they just download an app. They trust these things and they get right in there, and they drink more and get more excited about these games, and they don't realize how bad this can really get.
Mm-hmm. What kind of stories are you hearing from clients about how they got so deeply into debt? What's kind of the narratives overall that you're hearing?
In general, we're tying things mostly to the cost of living crisis in Canada. So we're not hearing too many more stories than usual about gambling. The trend is more that it's a percentage of the debt that is related to online gambling and things like that. So we'll have clients where 10% is related to gambling, and they don't even see that as an issue, where it really is. I mean, that's a lot. It can be a lot of debt, and it can be a big problem in their lifestyle.
So you're saying actually gambling debt is actually becoming a little bit more normalized amongst people. Just like, I owe a whole bunch, but it just is what it is.
Totally, and they're not recognizing it as an issue. Like I mentioned, in the past, because you had to physically go somewhere or participate in something that was more active, people were recognizing that it was a real issue. They were getting help, self-excluding. Their family and friends were more aware of what was going on. Now, you might not even know, but your partner or your friend might be deeply embedded in these apps, and it just looks like they're scrolling Instagram or something, and it's really hard to recognize for themselves and for their peers.
I imagine, obviously, your job is to help people with debt. You're not like a emotional counselor, but I imagine, have you noticed when people come to you to talk about these things, are they telling you for the first time that something that maybe their family members might not even know that they've been holding inside, or how does that work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we wear, as licensed insolvency trustees, we wear a lot of hats, and one of them is very much psychological and emotional related, and not just gambling, but all the time we hear things for the first time that are private. And, me personally, I like to encourage people to be honest with their family and their friends, because support from your community is more important than anything else.
Do you think you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg? Do you think there's, based on what you're seeing, these are the people who have taken the time to come and see you, they've recognized there's a problem. But for every person you see, how many people do you think there are that are just still suffering or, struggling in silence with gambling addiction?
Yeah, I think, like you said, it's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, these apps haven't been around that long, and they're growing rapidly. I see amongst my coworkers and my peers, people gambling on things that weren't even able to gamble on before, like elections and and weird little sports bets that just weren't available before. And they're encouraging their friends to do it. It's almost like the vaping craze. It's spreading like wildfire. And it does take time for that to come back to us as trustees. Just like mass layoffs and things like COVID, we don't see the effects right away in the insolvency industry. There is a delay in time, and you're absolutely right. It's the tip of the iceberg.
Here's some displays at Assiniboine Zoo to look at. Look at those beautiful lights. We'll be right back with the last check on our forecast. You're watching.
All right, here's a look at your 7-day forecast and prepare for a bit of a reality check as we head into the month of December next week. Things certainly feeling a little bit more winter-like. So -10 by Monday. The thing is, once we get through into Sunday, Monday, things are a little bit brighter, but we'll get some extra cloud cover into Tuesday. Wednesday, minus 13, maybe a few flurries into Thursday, and low temperatures hovering around minus 20 by the end of next week. So should you hang the lights this weekend? Well, you know what? Considering that we're getting some colder air moving in, if you have the time, I would do it this weekend, because last weekend was probably better, but this weekend's the second best. Well, when you're out walking along the lake, sometimes you find a cool rock or a shell or something like that.
But one Ontario man found something much bigger.
Yeah, I said, I'm going to go for a walk. And my wife said, you're nuts. So I was just going to go out, and because, I mean, when the water goes out that far, you're bound to find something. But I certainly didn't expect to find a shipwreck. And I did some measurements. I dropped a map point on Google Maps, and it's about 160 yards out from shore. And it was just really cool. I saw some birds sitting on a structure. I thought, oh, maybe it's an old dock or something, right? And as I got closer, I said, no, that's definitely a shipwreck.
That's not the first time that wreck has been exposed. This end of the lake, Pigeon Bay it's called, is fairly shallow, but it does generate very high waves. We can get 20-foot waves out in that lake. If you happen to be passing over top of a reef when your boat's riding down into the hollow of a wave, you can hit bottom. It can create havoc for ships. So more shipwrecks are in this portion of the lake than the rest of the lake. When it blows that hard from the southwest, it just shoves the water down the lake. That's the time when you go to find things that you've lost.
Like a ship?
Like ships. Or pieces of ships.
I saw a gentleman post that somewhere out here there is a shipwreck between here and Lakeside Park, and I guess a whole bunch of us are out trying to find it, and that's what I'm doing right now, and I don't see it. The water's kind of come in and covered it back up, and that's why we can't find it. So he was just in the right place, right time, and lucky guy, I guess.
What a find.
No kidding.
All I ever find are shells.
All because of those very strong winds that we've seen this week in parts of Ontario.
Treasure hunting.
Yeah, no kidding.
Have a wonderful night. We'll see you back here next week.
Have a great weekend.